Creamer Media's Mining Weekly is interviewing Mpumelelo Mkhabela, the chairperson of Menar, a private investment company with an actively managed and growing portfolio of mostly mining assets. Mpumelelo, let me kick off this interview by asking, how are you characterizing your company's performance for the year 2022, which is fast drawing to a close?
Yeah, thanks for the question. It's been a very great year for us at Menar, the entire group. And if I can just mention, three factors that makes us reach this conclusion. The first thing, which is very important thing in the industry, is that we have kept our safety record intact. So we've had no fatalities that are mine or work related in all our mines. So our safety record was kept intact, and that's very, very important because we part of this zero harm campaign, which is a focal point in the mining industry in South Africa. The second point is that we think we will be exceeding our targets by the end of the year in terms of production. So that has been quite a good year from that perspective. The third point, which points to the future of the group, is that we've been able to develop a new mining projects. We've been able to make progress in that regard. So you can be very successful in the current operations, but if you don't invest in new ones, then you can't say that is a success. So we're looking forward to converting projects into operational mines, and we're looking forward to getting more licenses to develop new mines. So we're quite excited about that.
And what were the main economic positives that stood out for you in 2022?
Well, if I were to just single out production, just production on its own, in two of our mines, which are under the Kenyan stable, at Bronco-Spruit, for example, we think that by the end of the year, we would have exceeded our production target of 2.4 million tonne for the year. And in our Palando mine, we think we would have exceeded our 2 million tonne a year production target. So that's quite excellent from that perspective. And in terms of new developments, we successfully launched our new edit in our mine in Piet Retief, which is part of the Kusipongo Reserve. We call it Udumo edit. So we started mining there in January this year. So that was a huge success, especially because the old sections of that mine had been running out of coal. So this new investment was critical to keep that mine running and to also secure jobs and also other social upliftment projects in the area. So this is just one part of a bigger development that we are planning. With all the licenses that we expect to get in 2023, we hope that we can then go ahead with the Balgathan A edit that is also part of the Kusipongo Reserve. All of this in Piet Retief. So we have done extremely well from that perspective. And lastly, in KZN, Martin, we run a very interesting mine there of anthracite, the Zululand anthracite colliery. There we started developing a new Mgeni edit where we expect to get access to a resource of about 1.2 million tonne of anthracite, high quality anthracite, export grade anthracite. So we're happy that we have started that project. We've gone a few meters deep, but yeah, there's still a lot of work to be done there. But we think that overall, these are the factors that we can safely say we have done well if we consider them.
And were there any negatives in Mpumelelo? And if so, how did you mitigate them?
Well, the biggest negative is it's logistics, and it's just a negative that affected the entire mining industry. So you'll recall that there was a time when Transnet had serious challenges in terms of making trains available for coal miners, manganese miners, iron ore, many other, even agriculture. They had difficulties securing trains. Now we were also affected by that problem for most of the year, so which basically meant that a huge load of our product had to be hauled via trucks, which obviously work against the whole policy plan to move freight from road to rail. And that affected us because even as the coal price was high, we were not reaping the rewards 100%, because if you take the load now to road, it costs more than if you have access to trains. However, the situation has been improving in the last a few weeks, except for one derailment that was reported last week. But generally, Transnet has been making good of its promise to improve availability of trains, and we hope that they stick to that and they make more gains in the coming year.
And is your diversification strategy still on track?
Yes, it is on track. Just to highlight our plans in South Africa, our manganese mine, which is in Hotezel in East Manganese, where we are mining 30-ton run of mine per month. And that mine has actually exposed us to the whole dynamics of how manganese works, from a logistics point of view, from a market access point of view, and even the social and regulatory dynamics in the Northern Cape. So with that lesson in mind, we're hoping that we will be able to use that in our next big project, which we have just completed the drilling program, and we're analyzing the results, we're talking to different stakeholders, and we hope to make good of the promise we've made before, that we will be announcing to the market what we think will be our biggest manganese investment in manganese in the Northern Cape in the new year. So yeah, our diversification strategy is looking good from that perspective, and we continue to look for more assets in South Africa and outside the country where we think we can make good returns.
And what's your assessment of the government's tackling of bureaucratic red tape?
Well, I think the government has made some very, very good rhetorical announcements about that. You remember that in the beginning of this year, the president even appointed Sipho Nkosi, a very experienced, well-renowned businessman, to help him cut the red tape in government decision-making. And the president had also, even before that, he had also made undertakings that the water use license approvals and environmental authorization will be fast-tracked. And the Minister of Mineral Resources and Energy had also made promises that the application system, especially for exploration and prospecting rights and all of that, will be implemented, the new system that will fast-track the application. So all of these policy undertakings we think are very, very good from the government side. What we need to see now is basically implementation. I think if the government can just stick to the commitments and implement, we'll all be good, and that will do a lot of good for the economy in terms of growth. As you know, mining is basically holding this country's economy at the moment.
And if you had to give advice to the government, what would be the single most important advice you could give to the government to allow this mining investment to grow and develop?
It will just be the point we've just spoken about. It will be the red tape issue. Implement the undertakings that you make on cutting the red tape and speeding up licensing so that investment can take place. And you can do that by basically having a carrot and stick approach. So for the investors that are willing to convert their right into mining operations and employ people, pay taxes and all of that, help them speed up their investment. Don't do anything to chase them away. But for those who get all of these licenses but don't develop the mines, I think there must be a bit of a stick there, because we actually need mining to happen in South Africa. Many mines are running old. Very little in terms of new investment is taking place. So the moment we put a stick and a carrot towards investments, I think government can generate a lot of GDP growth via mining.
And are there any geopolitical developments that you expect that will have an impact on your company's trajectory?
We think that the geopolitical situation that relates to the Russia's war in Ukraine will be a big factor in the new year. We don't think the war is going to end soon. Even if it does end, there is a lot of mistrust that has already been planted among major powers. So the Europeans are already skeptical about the future of Russian gas. So even if the war ends, I think they are very cautious now. They will never allow themselves to be too overly dependent on Russian gas, because then Putin can always switch off the taps anytime. So they've learned a hard lesson. So we think that because of those two factors, coal will continue to be popular in Europe. I think in 2023, I think the importations of our coal from South Africa and other countries will continue in Europe. And I think that will be good for South African mines. And I think for new developments, those of us who are still investing in new mines, coal mines, I think it will be good for us. It will be good for the jobs. It will be good for the foreign earnings for South Africa and for taxes. So I think from that perspective, the geopolitics will serve us well. Even if the war ends, I think coal will continue to be important.
And what drives your confidence in South Africa as an investment destination?
I think the most important thing in South Africa is the infrastructure. I know that there's a big debate about whether we're looking at infrastructure properly as we should in terms of maintenance and investing on upkeep and new infrastructure projects. But generally, notwithstanding the fact that we have not done well in terms of looking after our infrastructure well, South Africa is still very much a well-developed country in terms of infrastructure. So that remains a very big plus for South Africa and for investors. The second point is the financial system in South Africa. It's still top-notch. It's still one of the most sophisticated economy in terms of capital markets, in terms of the banking system. The entire financial architecture is actually very sound. The other factor is the judicial system and property rights. So our property rights regime is very good for investors. You're not going to have someone who can come and expropriate your intellectual property or even your physical property in South Africa. Once you got your property, it's yours, and you can sell and transact. You can do all of those activities. So I think from that perspective, South Africa remains a very sound investment destination. However, we can always make improvements.
That was Creamer Media's Mining Weekly, speaking to Mpumelelo Mkhabela, the chairperson of Menar.